my low production version of those like DJ motions where they just lower the music for whatever kind of big announcements happening here. Without being too dramatic or without delaying it, the last episode was a layup towards actually using the no-code automation tools and building with it. I wanted to kind of walk you guys through the process of doing that when it comes to doing market research. So just to kind of reiterate from before, I was harping on it for like the third time here, but the two different approaches when it comes to scraping is one, we don't know who we're reaching out to. So we're trying to basically play the field and put an ear down on all the different dialogues that's out there and kind of, see what people are talking about. That gets us closer understanding how we help the ideal person. The other one is we actually know who that person is, and we're doing the reverse of that, where we're seeing what's important to them. So for this one, focusing on the first pillar, the first thing we do is we first define pain points. So when it comes to search engine optimization, which is SEO, how things are searched, how things are basically, how people are looking to problem solve using their natural language. There's a few ways they do that. Twitter is one place where it often mirrors the search engine side of things, right? When you kind of come across people looking for solutions or even just looking to research about a problem, that could be something as simple as like a specific tool lagging or like not doing what it's supposed to do. What I like to do is research softwares that companies are using and kind of see who's talking about it and what's going on. This is really great for new tools. For example, Cluely right now, you see he's kind of in the bottom here, tucked away. Getting a lot of flack over on Twitter. So it's good to kind of pay attention to that and see what's going on. For your own sake and purposes, the kind of best broad stroke as a kind of advisory point is using a free tool like a keyword planner. And there's a number of these. You can dig through Grok to kind of find them. But when it comes to figuring out what words rank well for your specific community and quote unquote niche, you can play around with these. Just kind of use the free tools. This alone is like a 30 minutes to a few hours. As you can tell, I've been digging for I didn't mean to close that. I've been digging for a long time, and kind of figuring out specifically how can I use the pain points in my search, right? In my actual project. So for here, I'll show you guys kind of where I got to with that. It's important to kind of show you the process too, right? So for me, I went through a full extensive, deep research report, basically feeding the specific GPT project on my service offering, which is no-code AI and automation, and seeing how I can create a content funnel specifically for overwhelmed entrepreneurs. Now, this is targeting specifically the marketing side of things. If you're an overwhelmed marketer, you're wearing many hats, specifically in small businesses, how can I basically create this video for you? And how can I kind of walk you through that process strategically? So that's what the next 10 to 15 minutes is really going to be focused on. Those are the guys I'm mostly tailoring this for. And I'm really excited to kind of showcase it. So after you kind of figure out that pain point, the next piece is actually setting up the Appify tweet scraper. So specifically when you head over to Appify.com and you search for tweet scraper, there are two of them that are actually really nice. This one is 40 cents per 1,000 tweets. I went over this in the last video. Just to kind of get a reiteration on how Appify works. When you pour money into the platform, you get to use that as credits for specifically searching. I'll walk through kind of the setup for this. I highly recommend just taking this, feeding it into a GPT, having it kind of understand with the search feature how the actual scraper works. Another great resource, which I'll share in the description, is this GitHub called Twitter Advanced Search, which basically breaks down all the different ways that search queries work. You can kind of type this and test it on the app now. It works the same way for the most part throughout Google. You have these little prefixes, and it gives you a little fancy filter, which is always great, depending on how narrow your focus is, right? If you're looking for specific media, having the options to really dive that deep is really important. So really great resource for feeding that in. So with that scraper, there is an additional one as well. I should note There's an unlimited one, which has a fixed monthly plan. The limited one, if you're on a free plan, you can only get 10 results per scrape. This one requires you to have a 50 minimum rule. So you do need a paid plan in order to access. It's still 40 cents per, 1,000 leads, but that 40 cents has to come from preloaded credit, just for this example. There are other examples, which I'll share in future episodes, that are more cost effective. But even then, like this one, for the return that it gives you is actually really substantial. So yeah, just to break that down, I glazed over it quick with the GitHub, but I wanted to really dive into deep just to kind of paint the canvas with this, right? So when we think about queries, which is basically asking a question to the internet, there's a few different ways to do it. There's a basic one where it's like, hey, here's an account. What is the account posted? And you get that fed back to you. Another way is saying, hey, I want to get all the tweets within this relevant date range, which could be like a new launch. Apple may come out with some crazy stuff, so you want to maybe scrape all the posts about Apple and see if there's relevant projects or products that are relevant to what they're dropping. So, for example, Apple Intelligence has a lot of like media storage kind of features. Even iOS shortcuts is very under talked about. You can, with no code right now, go to the Shortcuts app on your iOS phone and automate task management, add shortcuts, set timers, all at the click of a button. So if you're interested in that, I'm more than happy to do a future episode on that. Another way of searching is having multiple searches. So look for job title. Once you find that job title, look for job history. That works for LinkedIn, for example. For X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. You can look for profiles that have specific bio, or like if you're looking for investors, founders, or like angel investors, those kind of things. You can look for Series B, that kind of stuff, and see if it kind of sections off into recency. So combining all these queries together is really helpful. Advanced search is using those operators. So the stuff I showed you on the GitHub where it has those little prefixes, that's another way of approaching it. So just to show you how complex this can get, I think it's important to really ground yourself on what you're using it for and ensure that you get the best bang for your buck, right? So taking you right into the next piece, here's how we get started. Make.com, no-code automation tool. This is the first time I'm showing it on camera here, but definitely not the last. Has one of the best free plans on the market. You get up to 1,000 operations a month. I have an affiliate as well in the description. You can as well, like I didn't have to pay $9 a month, which I think I'm still on. I don't even do the 16, but the $9 a month, and that's across multiple clients. Like 10,000 ops for a personal account is more than enough. You could actually get a lot of things done with just the free account as well. So I should note, most of the jobs and most of the people in the market are familiar with Zapier, which is a tool just like this. That one just costs a lot more, and it's it's just more famous because it's older. This is the way, the future. There is an alternative one called N8N, which if you're in the space, you've probably heard of. That also has like a flat, I think it's 25 or 30 bucks a month Canadian, 20 bucks USD. That allows you to pretty much like access what we're talking about here. So, take you guys through a quick little tour. So the way that Make.com works is actually really simple. You'll see a number of tutorials of this online. There are amazing resources. Shout out to Nick Sarayev, Saraev, fellow Canadian within the space, that is an absolute genius with this. He's the guy that got me into it. And then, so just kind of explaining what it is. This software allows you, through no code, to basically combine tools in these little modules, these little bubbles, and kind of wire it together through these little hooks and whatnot. So for our sake and purposes, what we're doing is we're drawing straight from Appify. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create an Appify connection. So I am going to run a selected actor. I'm first going to make a connection. So really quick, I'm going to blank this out. Actually, for all sake and purposes. Okay, I had to pause and hide that one just in case I flashed an API key. client account, but basically all you have to do is when you go here and you add it, it'll prompt you to hit the recommended. It'll open a new tab, give you the same kind of login window that you had when you were opening Appify. For us, we're going to go ahead and pull the exact one we're looking for. Now, it's going to give you kind of like this preloaded input JSON. This is really important, right? So when you think about JSON, people get a little scared when they see all these curly brackets and whatnot. All it is, very simply, is assigning these values under a set, what's called an array, which is basically a collection of these strings, right? So the quotation marks, whatever's inside of it is called a string, just a body of text, including numbers and all that jazz. And these actual hard brackets are a collection of those, right? Again, it's not important for you to understand how to write this, but it's important to understand how to read it. So you kind of see that happening over and over. It sets a new variable value. So it's kind of a key value relationship. And that's it. Just kind of don't take it any further than that. If you try to we can dive deeper in terms of the functions and whatnot, but for our sake and purposes, we're just going to stick to this. We'll pull for our 50 minimum. And pretty much leave the rest. This is all optional. You can kind of play with it and see based on the quality. But for us, I want to make sure as well, I think the build is probably important here. So build is the latest, and that's the version of the Appify actor. So an actor is the individual scraper, right? Let me just make sure that it's then also pulling from it. So give me a moment here. So make sure I read a bit of documentation before I started to go on there. I should note, when you pull open this, right there, that same GitHub link that I was talking about is available here. So by training your GPT on this, you essentially get a really strong thinking partner. So really quick, even if you don't have a paid version, you can do this with a free one. Kind of show you how to approach it. So first things first, we're going to go ahead and create a cert. We're going to say, hey, this is the scraper. And here is the way to use it, right? And then here is the input JSON. Now this was available right here when you first created this. This is also available if you'd like over here on the same input page when you actually open it up into your account. Remember the little manual option? JSON is also available here. But this kind of format is really important because now you can go here and say, hey, here's the input JSON. Help me tailor my search. What do you need to know? Ask me questions, right? Use it as sort of an assistant. Now, if you already know kind of what you want to change and you've used it a few times, this is really great. But remember, our main intent is to use it to find pain points. So this helps us kind of, feed the context to the GPT. So see, now it's asking us questions about what exactly it is we're trying to use it for. So to answer that, let's take it down the line. So for us, primary goal is more so focusing on, actually here, I'll answer like this, it's probably cleaner. So one, our primary goal is finding pain phrases specifically for marketing automation. Again, this is still a wide net, and if you narrow down even deeper, you can actually get a lot out of it. Date range and volume within the last year or last 6 months. Let's see, data filters, minimum amount of retweets. Personally, I don't really have a take on that, but let's go minimum 100 retweets because again, it's truly, actually, I don't even know about that. No retweets, minimum. Just kind of see. I don't really see if something has, I guess if something has a lot more retweets, there's supposedly more value in that, but I feel like you're trying to find, essentially, without doing the manual digging, the diamonds in the rough, the little kind of, secret stuff, if you will. Geography, USA preferred. Again, I'm Canadian, but I mostly work with US clients. Handles versus search terms. So, I don't want to do an advanced thing. So let's do search terms only. because you could do advanced, but then like I personally don't have any direct accounts that I would list for this. So search terms only. I want to cast a wide net. Maybe I'll increase the 50 results. We'll go a little bit bigger. No. Let's do, yes, I intend to scrape entire conversation threads. Okay. So I should note as well, I think Twitter returns 800 in one shot as per the API. So keeping that in mind, see here, it helps me kind of form all of this stuff. So it's going to go boom, boom, boom. And now it gives me a search query that I can use. Pretty much looking at it parallel, everything's pretty much aligned. You can kind of cross-reference it before you just throw it in there. For myself, max items, I'm going to do 100. We're going to keep it like this, within radius, 500 kilometers, 5,000 kilometers, which is quite extensive. Yeah, let's give this a shot. We're going to go with 100 on this one. Save, and see if there's any errors. Boom. So now it's looking for a validation piece. Now, alternatively, there's a few things I can do in this state, right? So I myself, doing it for some time, I understand this, but I think it's important to kind of showcase the troubleshooting. So for me, I like to pull out good old Cluely, and it's craving a restart. I say, help. Remove the search filter for this piece. You can even just hit Control Enter twice and see if it can wrap its head around what's happening here. So it automatically corrects the JSON, which I think is really valuable. Yeah. I could also alternatively take a screenshot, feed it into ChatGPT, which also takes some time. But I like to kind of showcase this process because it's very quick and allows me to kind of showcase it over and over. So it still ran back an error. Now when I feel like that, I will say Cooley is not always the best. So I'm going to feed that back in here. Again, I could take screenshots. I can kind of do this back and forth, and that's kind of the troubleshooting process. Eventually, all roads lead home, and eventually it kind of gives you the insight that you need. You could take the time and kind of actually filter through this. Like, this looks like a hot mess. I don't think this is even going to work. I don't even think it's a valid JSON. But yeah, like I don't see that working. So another alternative is actually cleaning it up. So going in through here, going to jsonformatter.org, pasting that all in, maximizing the page, gives you a better output here, which I personally like. Easier, it's readable. Yeah, this pretty much gives you everything. So for me, going back into this, cleaning that up. So seeing if there's anything needed, 100 there. I'd like to jump that up. Move this so I can hit save. Give this the good old update and restart. Run it again, and there we go. We now have a successful output. So without diving too deep into this, it basically shows the status right now that it's running. So it's actually going and doing the thing. It doesn't give you the actual data output because it needs some time to actually run. So what you can do, few alternatives, go over to the platform and kind of watch it yourself. If you're building this within the automation side, just adding a nice little sleep module, which throws in like, I don't know, 30-second delay, right? For our sake and purposes, we're not going to do that because I want to access it just about immediately. So from here, go get dataset items, and the dataset ID is now directly mapped to the one previously. I clean up that data transformation and basically output it as JSON. Limit is still 100, and pretty much go. So from there, I could just pull this exact one, giving me the status. Record not found. Oh, it's still running. So from there, if I wanted to, I could even go in here and say, hey, what's going on? This just finished. So now let's try that again. Dataset not found. So it must be. Am I not mapping the correct one? That seems like it's it. Unless this ID has changed. Let me go ahead and cross-reference. I'll pull this open. Now the actual log, or rather the input here. There it is, dataset ID. is different. This one's completed. So you can, again, troubleshoot it with the platform. Sometimes it'll give you the most accurate one. When you're running this in practice, that ID updates. So when you add in a sleep and then it actually goes to check it, it actually will show better. But there you go. I asked for it to output and it goes ahead and it gives me everything in bundles. So no results, no results. Interesting. So the fact that I actually even ran this gave me a pretty much nothing. So that's important to know. That means my search query was not properly set up. So let's take it back and say, hey, this led nothing. So reference documentation. This gave me no results. Improve it. This is kind of how it looks in practice. It's not the most laid out in the sense of like having a direction, but remember, we're playing the field. We're doing research. This is what research looks like. It's not like, sexy, but like it's actively going, saying, hey, how can I figure out and learn about this in a way that's actually going to benefit me and teach me stuff. So you're just going to keep running this, getting it to pretty much clean. This one's still seeing an invalidation piece. So we're going to run it through this. Looks like it's there. We're going to run a validation. Format, beautify. It seems to work. So I'm assuming these kind of like slashes are probably throwing it off. Run it again. Boom. Works beautifully. So now it's running. All right, we're going to give it a beat. Let it pull. And we check the runs. You see it here actively going, and look, boom, it's getting results now. Got my 100 results. So it's all actually pulling now, which is important. So I can go back to storage, dataset ID, take this, throw it into here. Like I mentioned with the sleep thing, it's a bit different. Now I have this kind of outputting. So how do I use pretty much the tools at my whim to make use of this? So I like to really wrap my head around a few different approaches. So there's an iterator, which basically takes the bundles and creates more bundles, right? So you can kind of imagine that, especially with 100 of them. Or you can do an array aggregator, which is putting them all into one. What's the intent and purpose behind that? I like to say when I'm expanding things, that means I'm trying to store it for later. I'm trying to put it into Google Sheet for rows and whatnot. So if I was at this stage and I was satisfied with my results, I would just do that, have it kind of be compiled right into a Google Sheet, and it would basically run over that Google Sheet each time there's a bundle, right? One by one. What I would like to do right now is actually make use of that information. So I'm going to go ahead, pull that information, and we're going to see what I get out of it. So from here, I get most of my detail, not from that bundle, but yeah, pretty much from the text, right? So the text and the term, whatever search term returned what. The rest of the stuff, the ID, those kind of results, I don't really care for. So boom, putting that together, I now want to layer in a GPT that can analyze that specific one array. This is important. If I fed GPT 100 different inputs, it would be juggling, trying to figure out, wrap its head around it. What I'm trying to do is get it to interact with the information in a way that's meaningful. There's a few ways you can do this simply. Right? You can train a GPT specifically on like, you are an expert market researcher or something like that, right? Make it extensive. Then you can do a user input, analyze this array, and I realize I have the letter Z binding to kind of hide it. Let me shuffle this way. Analyze this array and share insights. Very, very basic. Again, you can tailor this as deep as you like. But I'm going to go ahead and run this, right? So see, now it's actually waiting. I should have added the sleep module there. You know what? Let's do that just for the sake of practice because it's going to run a few times. So we're going to add sleep, give myself a good 20-second delay, and I promise I'll talk and keep entertaining throughout that. So there we go. It's running that 20 seconds. Hopefully in that 20 seconds, this should complete. If not, I could just feed it the previous one, right? Just kind of copy the ID and do what I was doing earlier. But for our sake and purposes, boom, the sleep worked. I made it in time. So as we wait, it's going to go ahead, cross over there. Still didn't map over. So clearly we need to do some sort of, this data set ID is not accurate. We got to do some digging here, figure it out. But pretty much for sake of troubleshooting, get you the 80/20 on it. You're going to go ahead, steal this one, throw it into here. We're just going to hard code this one for now, just so I show you guys what it's like. Over here. So now it pulls that, takes it all into one array. So it looks like it needs more information. So in order to do that, I generate a better prompt to analyze all of it. I realized I hit a hotkey that ended my recording there. Let's bring it back. So analyze or help me analyze this data set by improving this prompt. So there we go. Let's bring it back to the screen. Oop, my apologies. There we go. So brings us back, gives us a nice little prompt we can actually work with. Right. So the actual output, we want to map it, which in this case is the array. Right. Give it a little space. Now let's run it again. And we'll pull the same data sets. I'll move this. So here we go. Pulls that. Right. So now instead of outputting 100 of these different bundles, puts it all into one big long text for GPT to work with and actually compile into insights. Now, this is the part where I would write it into Google Sheets, take it somewhere further where I can then analyze, report on it, make use of it. And that's pretty much how you extend the scraper in a really powerful way. So you see this full overview, giving me kind of a full-blown report. I don't think I could scroll from zoomed in like that. So there you go. Kind of breaking down all the different challenges, different ways you can actually make use of it. You can ask for sources. You can dig deeper. Again, this is the process of research. It's really finding out how you can get closer to understanding pain and then solving for that. That's really the bottom line, right? Because once you solve for that, you can then dig deeper to just solve for that specific pain point over and over and over again. And that's when you get into a stride where you can run these tweets, scrape with it, export that, build a real reporting loop that you can segment, prioritize, score with GPT, and then engage with custom outreach, which we'll cover soon. But until then, this has been a product branch, I would say, for Blank Canvas from Plinko Solutions. A lot more coming on this topic, especially breaking down the different approaches with scraping, specifically for market research, outreach, and meaningfully connecting to people. Until then, we'll keep this going. I'll also see you guys tomorrow. So stay tuned, Blank Canvas, a lot of new things coming. Yeah, until then.